Tēnā koutou katoa, ko here taonga aho, ko Nick, toka ingoa. So I'm going to set the scene for us, okay? So we are going out for dinner. We're pulling up to a local restaurant in Onehunga on a weeknight, maybe a Tuesday. And as we do this, we see a beautiful new Tesla slide into the car park around the back. And inside this Tesla is Linda. Linda has had a very stressful day at work. She's come straight from work. She's got her suit on still. She's still on the phone when she gets out of the car. She hangs up with a sigh, locks her car, and heads around to the restaurant. At the same time, Steve is pulling up. Steve has got a shopping trolley full of all his belongings. He wedges it securely off the footpath, and he heads in as well. Steve is greeted warmly by the staff in this restaurant, and he heads over to his usual spot in the corner, pulls out his phone charger, plugs it in, and gets comfy. Linda is shown to the same table as Steve. They exchange a little bit of an awkward glance, but sit down, have a look at the menu, and get settled. So the restaurant's starting to fill up. It's a busy night. As this happens, Portia arrives with her two little kids. Portia has also had a very long day at work. She hasn't had a chance to cook anything for dinner. The kids are already in their PJs. She's looking around for a seat, but she can't see anywhere. So someone comes up to help her out, takes her over to the same corner as Linda and Steve. At this point, Steve is deep in a story, talking to Linda. Linda is listening intently. She's eating her starter, which is a roasted artichoke heart with some olive tapenade. They make some space around the table, and Portia and the kids sit around and they all get comfortable. A few minutes later, Portia and the kids are having their starter. One of the little kids is a bit suspicious of the artichoke on her fork, but Steve gives her a bit of encouragement and she gives it a taste. Steve and Linda are having their mains, which tonight is a lamb and cannellini bean ragu with crispy potatoes and sourdough. So you might have noticed a couple of things already about this restaurant. They're a little bit different to maybe some of your own restaurant experiences. And there's more things that I haven't mentioned yet. One of which is that none of the people working in this restaurant are getting paid to be here. And another one is that all of the food on the plates was destined for landfill. So desserts up next. Tonight we've got poached tamarillos, kaffir-infused pears, and Greek yogurt. And after dessert, it's time to go. Steve is the first one to leave. He rummages around in his coat pockets for some coins, puts them in the tin that's on the bar, and heads out. Portia comes up next. She types in $15 into the EFTPOS machine. She heads out. The kids say, see you later. Linda comes up last. She takes a moment, looks around her, and then she types in 100 into the EFTPOS machine, taps her card, and she heads out as well. So it sounds like quite a nice picture, right? Like quite a beautiful scene, this community hub where people from all walks of life come together, make these connections over their food, pay whatever they can. And you'd be right to think that, you know, it is a beautiful scene in a lot of ways. There's a lot of nice things going on here. However, there are some significant and sad truths that have led to this scene. There are some big problems that we are facing that have contributed to this scenario that I've just described for you. The first part of the problem has to do with food. Specifically that we have too much food. We have so much food that here in Aotearoa, New Zealand, we export enough food to feed 35 million people in a year. That's exporting, that's not counting the food that we eat here. But there's so much food. This is the food that our farmers grow, harvest and sell. So much so that we can't keep up with eating it all. So what happens to all the extra? You can probably see where I'm going with this. We waste it. How much waste are we dealing with? A third of the waste that a third of the food that we produce globally gets wasted every year. In New Zealand, that's more than 100,000 tonnes of food, which is more than $3 billion worth. To break that down into each household, it's more than $1,500 every year per household. And food waste makes up at least a quarter of each household's waste, the average household. But we've got so much food, right? There's enough for everybody. So what's the big deal? The second part of the problem is that there are a lot of people who aren't getting enough food. So this is so much of a problem here in Aotearoa, New Zealand, that 1 in 5 people are experiencing food insecurity every day. And so what do we mean by food insecurity? It's basically about having access to food, okay? So in our society where we don't produce the food ourselves, where we buy food from the shops, when we talk about food insecurity, we are essentially talking about poverty, okay? When we talk about poverty, we're talking about socioeconomic disadvantage. We're talking about a whole lot of factors that contribute to these issues that mean that people can't afford food. So there's far too many things, far too many factors going into this that I can really deal with today. But what I can do is throw out a few key words that you might recognise from school or from the news or other places. Words like colonisation, capitalism, wealth distribution, intergenerational poverty, climate change, Cyclone Gabrielle, or flooding, cost of living crisis. This last one particularly has been thrown around a lot lately. You probably have already heard maybe that groceries are the most expensive they've been in 30 years. You might have already also heard that fruit and veggies have gone up by about 20% in just the last year. You've probably heard about the supermarket duopoly that holds all the power to keep the prices up and keep pushing them up. You might have been noticing it yourself at the shops. You or your family might be feeling the pinch, buying essential items. This might be a new experience for you. But the sad truth is that this is a daily reality for a lot of people. At the same time, we're living in a society that is becoming increasingly disconnected and increasingly fragmented. We don't know our neighbours, we live in suburbs rather than communities. We have less and less opportunities to come together over a shared experience or over a meal. We're lonelier than we ever have been before. We're social creatures, so we are suffering in this isolation. So, lonely people, expensive food, cost of living crisis, mountains of food waste. Why all these problems? Yeah, it's to do with these systems. We have a food system that produces a vast amount, but it's not reaching the people that need it. We have this social system that perpetuates inequality so that the people with the least can't catch a break. Sounds like we need a solution. The good news is that I'm here today with a solution, or at least part of one. So the first part of our solution has to do with rescuing the food. Okay? So, waste is a symptom of an inefficient system. When things that go into the system aren't used up, waste is created. So we need to have another system that deals with this waste, intercepts it. We're lucky that here in Tamaki Makaurau there's quite a few different organisations working towards this mission. We are just one of them. And what this looks like in practice is a whole bunch of different people from different organisations driving around in vans, picking up food, sorting through boxes in warehouses, sending food on to other places, intercepting the food and getting it to somewhere where it's going to get used. What we're doing is making it more convenient for supermarkets and suppliers to give the food to us than it is to throw it away. We've created our own system that exists alongside the mainstream food industry to address the inefficiencies within it. The second part of our solution involves creativity. And to talk about this, I'm going to borrow a quote from a chef whose name is Douglas McMaster. He owns a restaurant called Silo. He says that waste is a failure of the imagination. And so what he means by this is that there are so many ways to avoid something edible ending up in the bin, we just have to imagine them. So we have chefs who practice this every day in our restaurants. They work with our teams of volunteers to come up with 3-course meals from scratch every day with this rescued food. So we don't know what the ingredients are going to be until they turn up in the van. Imagine a MasterChef mystery box challenge, but you have to feed 100 people 5 nights a week. Sometimes it's easy, sometimes we get a whole van load full of beautiful produce and the menu comes together easily. Sometimes it's not so easy, sometimes it's a random assortment of things. Sometimes it's the same thing over and over again for weeks at a time. At the moment it's cauliflower again and again. Sometimes it involves getting into the depths of the freezer to get out ingredients that we've been building up and saving for weeks. Sometimes the food is a little bit unexpected, like a nasturtium taco or gnocchi for dessert. But it's always delicious and we always deliver something. And it's this element of creativity that gets people thinking about what waste really is or what it really can be. So the next part of our solution has to do with community and building connection amongst people. So there are a couple of ways that we do this. One of them is making our restaurants accessible to everybody by offering a pay-as-you-feel experience. And so on a practical level, we can achieve this through using rescued food and through having volunteers. But the concept runs a little bit deeper than that, and it's about this idea of koha. So koha is about reciprocity. It's about giving and receiving. It's about the mana of both the giver and the recipient and the mutual respect they hold for each other. And so this is really crucial to how we make our restaurants accessible to everybody. Because everybody who comes in contributes to our mission. Simply by eating the food, our diners are reducing food waste. So they are contributing to us even if they do not have the capacity to make a financial contribution. The other way that we foster this community is through our volunteers. So they're not a workforce, they form this community. And again, it's about this reciprocity. The volunteers are donating their time and efforts to us to achieve our mission, but they are gaining something in return. Like Brian, who washes dishes in Unahunga at least twice a week. He lives alone, and he loves meeting all the different volunteers that come and go. He feels less lonely because of the time that he spends with us. Marama down in Wellington, she originally signed up because her boss signed up the whole team for a volunteer night, but she's been coming back every week since then, every Wednesday night, because she is connected to the people that she serves the food to, and she sees what a difference it makes in their lives. She knows them and they know her. We also have Tom back up here in Auckland, who I think initially just liked the free meals that he got from volunteering, but he keeps coming back because he is fascinated by what he sees the chefs coming up with every time he does a shift in the kitchen. And so he takes what he learns back to his flat, and now him and his flatmates are all much more engaged in what they're cooking and how they're producing waste in their own home. So it's this element of human connection that really engages people with our mission and what we're doing, and enables us to keep going. So let's think about this idea of beyond. We've established that we have these systems, right, that generate waste, that perpetuate this inequality. These are systems that define how we eat, how we live, how we go to a restaurant, what we understand a restaurant to be. And so in order to have this solution, we need to think beyond these definitions. We need to think beyond these sort of limitations that define how we eat and how we dine out. When we think about sustainability and when we think about these big problems and these big issues, this idea of beyond takes on more significance, because in order to maintain any sort of positivity in the face of these problems, we have to think beyond our individual actions and think beyond even the actions of our community and think beyond even what we understand our community to be, to put them into a bigger context, to understand how these things contribute to the bigger picture. And everybody eats, each plate of food takes on a meaning beyond simply feeding a hungry belly. It's a symbol of reducing waste, It's a symbol of human connection, and it's a symbol of community. It's a symbol of how the standards of what is edible has become confused with what's marketable in our economically driven society. So we'll keep going, we'll keep doing what we're doing for as long as we can, because unfortunately there's no shortage of need for healthy and affordable food. There's also no shortage of food being chucked out. So this solution is more important than ever, this feeding bellies, not bins. Yeah? I'm going to circle back to our mates from earlier, Steve and Linda and Portia, because now we have a little bit more understanding of some of the factors that have brought them to be around this dinner table. Because I think it's really important for us to think about how while we keep having all this food piling up in landfill, and we keep burning carbon to deal with it, thousands of children are going to sleep with empty bellies every night. We need to think about how Linda has enough money for her lovely Tesla, but Steve doesn't have enough money even for a second-hand car that he can sleep in. We need to think about how Portia works a full-time job, but still struggles to afford the healthy food that she wishes that she could feed to her kids. What we really need to think about is how avoidable these situations are. How we actually have everything that we need here in Aotearoa, New Zealand already to address these problems. And lastly, what we can think about is the significance that our seemingly small actions take on when we combine them with the actions of so many others. I'm Nick from Everybody Eats. Thank you for having me. Tēnā koutou katoa.